Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov Chess channel, and welcome back to our Queen's Gambit Declined series. So in this series, we're following this very nice opening from White's and from Black's perspective, and today we're continuing with our Queen's Gambit Declined studies and the so-called Ragozin Defense. The Ragozin Defense we have started recently with our intro video, and we have covered also the most important tactical traps that can happen to you from White's and from Black's perspective. And today we're analyzing now the Ragozin Defense more from Black's perspective. I've prepared now again the Alekhine variation of the Ragozin Defense, the Alekhine variation we started with a beautiful game that was played by Magnus Carlsen against Vasily So, where he really destroyed Vasily So. Really brilliant attack in the Alekhine variation of the Ragozin Defense. But today we're analyzing, as I said, a little bit more the game from Black's perspective, and I found really such a beautiful game that was played by Stockfish against another top engine RubiChess. So here Stockfish played with the black pieces, the Ragozin Defense of the Queen's Gambit Declined, and many times you have asked me here to cover more games from Black's perspective that are played by the Stockfish engine, and I found really a beautiful game. And I think this game you can use as your cornerstone in order to make further progress, if you want, of course, to study this beautiful chess opening. So as I said, let's check out now again this Ragozin Defense and what is now the Alekhine variation, how you should play against this very aggressive method of White. So this video that I'll do today will be added also, of course, in our Comment to Chess Games Play by Computer series, where I have covered almost 300 games played by top engines, but it will be also, of course, added to our new series, the Ragozin Defense from White's and from Black's perspective. So let's check out now this beautiful chess game that was played by the Stockfish 14 engine. So here d4 was played by RubiChess. We have knight to f6. After c4 e6, we have here the move knight to f3, the anti-Nimzo or counter-Nimzo Indian setup. And I'll try now to explain every move that is going on, because I think, as I said, you should really use this game as your cornerstone in order to make progress in the Ragozin Defense, because we'll cover also in the continuation of the series more games played by Stockfish, because they're simply the best when it comes to chess opening. So here after move e6, of course, after move knight to c3, you risk to go maybe into the Nimzo Indian. So here after move knight to f3, we have reached now the anti-Nimzo on counter Nimzo Indian setup, and after move d5, the game transposed now into the three knights variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined. And as I said, if you want to see also some different opportunities, please check out our series from the beginning. We have also covered the Vienna variation with the move d takes c4, then to make progress with b5 or bishop to b4. It's also a playable line that we have started in the Queen's Gambit Declined series. So after move knight to c3, now comes the Ragozin move bishop to b4, and we have started now to recently analyze the so-called Alekhine variation of the Ragozin Defense. Queen to a4 is, of course, a forcing move. You have to play knight to c6 in order to stay in the game. Now many times you see this line e3. So e3 is, of course, a slightly passive move, but of course it opens now this diagonal. Now after potential d takes c4, White will recapture the pawn, and also with bishop to d2, here the bishop is covering, of course, the knight. Then we don't have, in some occasion, we don't have to recapture the knight with the bishop. But what I never liked about the move e3, and we have seen recently in this game that Magnus Carlsen played, he played this move bishop to g5 against Vasily So, which is much more aggressive. Still we'll cover also these lines from Black's perspective, but as I said, e3 is of course perfectly fine, but it's a little bit blocking out a little bit the dark bishop. So the dark bishop is simply out of game. So here in the continuation, Stockfish plays now kingside castling. Even if you would try maybe something like knight to e5, this move should not bother you if you're playing now the game from Black's perspective. Just play bishop to d7, go into normal lines, and even if something like, I don't know, knight to d7 happens, if your opponent wants to desperately take out your light square bishop, notice that this bishop is bad anyway. It's blocked out by its own pawn structure, so that's why it's not such a bad position if your opponent wants to give up maybe such a good piece, such a centralized knight for maybe your bad bishop. It doesn't matter here after knight to d7, queen to d7, and even if something like, I don't know, c takes d5 happens, still we can take knight takes d5, and you see now we're continuing simply the pressure here around the square c3. Also notice that the d4 is a long-term weakness. So this is something that White should not do. This is, in my opinion, a bad position here for White. So after move e3, here Stockfish simply continued with kingside castling. Now we have bishop to d2, and now comes a very important move, and a very important move order that you have to play in the Ragozin Defense now. So you have to play here d takes c4. It is strange a little bit it seems so that you have lost the tempo basically because your opponent will probably take bishop to c4 and you invited your opponent's piece into the game. But notice there is every time when you play an opening, there are good ideas in the opening, but there are also some bad ideas in the opening. And of course, many of these moves can make something in the continuation of the game, but sometimes they have also sort of a disadvantage in the continuation. So that's why you see after move bishop to c4 and queen to a4, now notice that there is a possibility to play a6 b5, maybe here the fork. Of course, you have to first bring the bishop here maybe to d7, and then you have to connect the rook with the queen, because a6 b5 after bishop to b5 couldn't be possible because the rook would be hanging. But if we connect, of course, the rook to the queen, then of course a6 b5 is a really beautiful tactical idea. So that's why white is gaining an extra tempo with the move bishop to c4, but will probably in one particular moment have to retreat either with the queen or either with the bishop. So with a6 b5 we're threatening still this very beautiful fork. So as I said, maybe in the beginning it seems to you that this is a strange idea to invite your opponent just into the game immediately, but actually this bishop on c4 or the queen to a4, as we said, could be maybe a tactical problem. So that's why we're playing immediately the move a6. So this is the move order that you have to remember. The d takes c4 followed with a6. And there is now again something that we should notice in these types of structures and these types of positions. First of all, what we have to notice that we have here a pawn majority on the queen side for black. So black has an advantage on the queen side. White has a slight advantage in the center of the board. So white has here a 2 versus 1 situation in the center of the board, and we should not tolerate this position. We should do something about this. So the main idea is now after move d takes c4 a6, and then to break the position with the move e5. This is something that you have to apply. If you don't do that, then your opponent could make some kind of a move e4, and if you connect these two pawns, maybe e5 d5, the pawns will roll here in the center. So you have to be fast now. You have to break and enter here with the move e5. You don't want to tolerate this pawn center control that white has here. I think we can agree maybe white doesn't have immediately an advantage. Maybe this is not already a wild game, but the game can be really dynamic after a potential e4 move. If white manages to pull off this move in an active way, then I think you could have really many position problems. So after move a6 here, we have queen to c2 that was played by RubiChess, escaping now here with the queen, and now comes bishop to d6. Very, very, very important move. So we're preparing now e5. If maybe your opponent would try maybe here something like a4 to maybe somehow prevent this idea to play the move b5 here for black, actually it doesn't matter, because still we can play here something like b6 first of all, playing bishop to b7 or similar ideas. So we still have opportunities to include our piece into the game. But now even if e4 happens, if white is desperately trying to break and enter in the center, then with e5 we can really solve all of the positional problems. Because if white even plays the move d5 now, okay, he'll have sort of a space advantage, but this is not a good position in my opinion anymore for white. First of all, notice that after move a4 there is a big hole in white's camp, and we can use it immediately. Knight to b4 comes with the tempo, and now the queen has to move. And now what we actually should realize, that we have basically sort of a King's Indian structure. If this position happens to, then maybe with knight to e8 or maybe even knight to d7 we could break and enter with the potential f5 move. Because okay, this is not a pawn chain because the bishop is here, but with the support of the bishop and with the support of the e5 pawn, we could actually, I think, play something like knight to d7, g6, and then f5. Break and enter here will really play this common King's Indian attack on the king side. Notice that with queen to b4, of course, the queen has to lose the tempo, and still we can fix the knight further with the move a5. So the knight on b4 will be very annoying piece. So that's why this is something that white should not do here. The move a4, it leaves simply a big hole in the position. So here after move bishop to d6, what white could do maybe is immediately kingside castling, but now we should really break and enter. This wasn't played in the game, but I wanted to show really a beautiful tactical motif that can happen to you. This will happen to you many times in the Ragozin Defense. As I said, this wasn't played in the game, but it's something worth to know in the Ragozin Defense. When you break here the position with the move e5, and that's our goal, then something like this will probably happen. D takes e5, knight to e5, knight to e5, pardon me. after bishop to e5, many times you witness this idea, f4, attacking the bishop on e5, and this is something that bothers many times black. But notice this tactical shot that you have to make now, bishop to d4. Bishop to d4 is really beautiful idea, because first of all, if e takes d4 happens, then queen to d4, and then we can simply take out the bishop on c4. So even if white doesn't react, if white plays something else, if white plays something like bishop to d3, then we can play bishop to b6, and now probably king to h1 will happen, because still white is trying to make the move e4 and then control here the center of the board. But still we can play normal development with bishop to d7, because still e4 would be too rushed here, because then with knight to g4 here there is a huge tactical problem for white. Also queen to h4 is then an opportunity with the support of these two bishops. I think white could be tactically lost. So this is really wild. As I said, this e5 goal is simply our main strategical goal now. The e5. You have to break the position. Even if d5 happens again, we would reach a similar structure than with knight to d7, knight to e7, knight to d7, f5, f4, e4, and similar ideas. Maybe g6, f5. But I think now with the move d5, we can notice also that the light square bishop is simply a little bit blocked out by its own pawns, and now flank attack on the king side, I think, is the beautiful idea. Still, we have even opportunities to play b5, b4. So as I said, this is in my opinion a slightly better position for black. So after move here bishop to d6, RubiChess tried a different idea. Knight to e4 tried to simplify the game, and Stockfish accepted the challenge, played simply knight to b4 immediately, attacking the queen. After move knight to f6, we have queen to f6, and now queen to e4. The problem, I think, again for white in this position is, even if you retreat, I don't know, maybe to b1 immediately, then the b5 move is possible. That's why RubiChess played here the move queen to e4, not allowing b5 immediately, because then the rook would be hanging. So that's why here bishop to e2 would be maybe sort of an idea. But now with bishop to b7 and kingside castling, actually again black should be better here, because black can immediately attack the position with a beautiful attack with the move queen to h6. You see now the bishop is attacking the knight is controlling the h2. Now there is of course the threat bishop takes f3 followed with queen takes h2, checkmate. Even if you try maybe something like, I don't know, here e4 to liberate this long diagonal and attack the queen, there is now also a beautiful tactical shot, bishop takes h2, and now you have to step back, you have to simply take, knight takes h2, and now the bishop is hanging. If you play of course something like king to h2, then of course king to h1, then of course bishop to f4 creates a more important check, and we can then afterwards take out the bishop. So this is again completely losing game here for white. So after move queen to e4, that was played by RubiChess, we have seen queen to b1 is simply a slightly passive move. Then rook to b8 was played by here by Stockfish, and again notice b5 cannot be prevented anymore. Even if you play a4, as we said, the knight on b4 will be simply a powerful piece on this square. The hole that we have created here will be a long-term weakness for white. So again black could have a comfortable game. So now finally queen to b1, but now b5 anyway. We have bishop to e2, and after bishop to g7 we have reached now the same position like before. So we have now a3 kicking away the knight to c6, and here kingside castling. So at least with the move a3 the RubiChess engine kicked away the knight, and now at least this long diagonal for the light square bishop is covered. So we have now h6, here we have a rook to d1 played by RubiChess, and now e5 anyway. So again I'm pointing out, even if d5 happens again, notice that we can always go into this King's Indian structures. This is, I think, in our beautiful position again with g6, queen to g7, f5. We could break and simply push the pawns forward. So as I said, this is something that white will probably not do, this idea to play d5. If that happens, the pawn structure gets more and more fixed, and then we know where should we attack. So here in the continuation, bishop to c3. So at least RubiChess try to improve the bishop's activity, which is I think a good choice. Now at least the bishop comes on the same diagonal where already the queen is. So we have now e takes d4, knight to d4, knight takes d4, and after rook to d4, if bishop to d4, here queen to g5 is very annoying, then you have to probably play something like bishop to f1, and then we can simply make progress with bishop to f3. This would be also beautiful attack. Then the rook has to play something like rook to c1, because you don't want to allow here your opponent maybe to play the move c5. This could be very annoying to handle. So maybe then rook to e8, and then after something like b4, I think h5, h4, h3 could be also a very nice progress here for black. So here probably white can defend its position, but still black should be better in these types of positions. So okay, after move knight to d4 that was played, as we said, rook to d4 was played by RubiChess, and now Stockfish makes simply further progress with the move c5. We have a rook to d2, we have a queen to e6, and now after bishop to d3, now very important move, of course, g6, not allowing here some annoying checks on h7. Of course, tactical shots are not possible because because the queen is of course covering also the g6 square. So here in the continuation we had queen to a2, and beautiful move by Stockfish c4. It's not allowing here some simplifications for white. Now notice that in my opinion black has a much better activity with both of these bishops, with the centralized queen, with the opportunity to occupy these open and semi-open files. The d file could be occupied, the e file could be occupied. So again, I think a comfortable game here for black. So bishop to e2, bishop to c7. Now of course preparing maybe some queen to d6 ideas to deliver checkmate. We have a bishop to e4, we have queen to a1, and now rook from f to d8, competing simply on the open file. You have to play it like this because you don't want to tolerate, of course, these rooks to come actively into the game. So queen to c1, we have a h5, trying h4, h3 maybe to create further weaknesses in white's position. We have rook to d4, bishop to b6, attacking the bishop, rook to d2, and now after bishop to c7 we have bishop to d4 here by RubiChess. Rook to c8, we have bishop to c3. So RubiChess is simply not knowing what to do anymore here, because the power of black activity is simply too much to handle. There are simply no good squares for white, even if, I don't know, maybe white trade off some pieces further here. After, let's go back. Even if, I don't know, maybe the pieces will be traded off, then still I think here, because of the space advantage that black is here on the queen side, again, this should be probably a comfortable game. But as I said, maybe it was time simply to make some kind of a simplification for RubiChess, because the rook activity on the d file couldn't be maybe further tolerated. So as I said, here bishop to d4, then bishop to c3 again. So RubiChess played, I think, simply too many times with the same piece without knowing actually what it's doing. So here rook to e8, we have bishop to d4. We have now beautiful move here by the Stockfish engine. We have g5. If you take, of course, then of course the queen will come here on h6, and then you could have some problem here on around the square h2. So this is something that you should not do. So here in the continuation, after move g5, we have bishop to c3, and now g4. So Stockfish just makes further progress because the pieces of white are simply too passive here. So in the continuation, we have a rook to d4, rook from c to d8. We have a queen to d2, but now king to h7. Very important move. Even if you take, then of course the rook will take, and the queen is in front of the battery, which is not good. The queen should be behind the rook if you want to create some kind of a beautiful battery. Now the queen could be endangered. So that's why after move king to h7, we have a4, we have a queen to e5, trying checkmate on h2. So that's why g3. But every move that maybe is preventing something else is creating, of course, new weaknesses in the position. Of course, after move g3, you have solved one problem, but now again we have new problems. We have some light square weaknesses in front of the king. So as I said, the activity is simply here beautiful by black's pieces. So queen to f5, we have a takes b5, a takes b5, rook to d7, we have king to g6. Even this is possible because black is simply too passive here in the position. We have rook takes d8, rook takes d8, queen to c1, and now rook to b8, trying now maybe some maneuvers. Bishop to b7, followed maybe with queen to e4, trying with this important battery, and trying to deliver checkmate. So we have here rook to f1, queen, rook to a8, we have queen to d1, and now rook to d8 again, attacking the queen, queen to a1, and now this maneuver, as we said, bishop to c6, maybe bishop to b7, would cause now many problems here. So queen to c1, bishop to b6, h4, and now here after move queen to e4, the game is basically over because you have to play f3. But now with bishop to e3, we have here the fork, king to h2, g takes f3, bishop to f3. But now after queen takes f3, we have here this check. But again, of course, you can cover, and black is continuing the game with an extra piece. So even if you do something else, even if you take this one, still the position doesn't change. Bishop takes c1, again, it's completely winning here for black. So really beautiful game by Stockfish. Let's go back. First of all, this very important theory. Okay, after move queen to a4, we have to play knight to c6. After e3, kingside castling, secure the king perfectly fine. So bishop to d2, d takes c4, bishop to c4, and now a6. Queen to c2. This move we'll see many times, and now bishop to d6 with the preparation to play the move e5. And okay, now as we said, white doesn't have to play knight to e4. White can play kingside castling immediately, but still our strategy remains e5, e5, e5. Now d takes e5, knight to e5, maybe knight to e5, bishop to e5, f4, bishop to d4 solves all of your positional problems with bishop to b6, bishop to d7, bishop to c6, rook to e8, knight to g5. As we said, still you have beautiful activities, and I think this is a playable position for black. So really great game played by Stockfish. I think all of the beautiful strategies were applied here by the Stockfish engine. The most important tactical motifs, the most important strategies, the most important endgame ideas were also applied. Beautiful game, and I hope you can use it in order to have a good preparation in your Ragozin Defense if you want, of course, to play this opening. And here's the whole playlist of our Ragozin Defense. Check it out, and maybe you can have also a great preparation. And if you want to study some different ideas of the Queen's Gambit Declined, check out our Queen's Gambit Declined series with some other ideas like the Queen's Gambit Declined Vienna variation, the Harvard's attack. We have seen also the Ragozin Defense, the Tara's Defense, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.